Welcome to the Published and Paid podcast, where we share book, business, leadership, and life lessons in 20 minutes or less to help you build a thought leadership brand and business. My name is Jasmine Womack. I'm a former middle school language arts teacher turned seven-figure entrepreneur, and I am glad that you are here. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Published and Paid podcast. Listen, I am glad to be back. And I put together a plan today that should actually alleviate or help me to avoid any long periods of not talking to you guys. But listen, Happy New Year. I am so excited to be here. And today is my 2025 year in review, where I'm going to be sharing with you some of the challenges that I face, some of the risks that I took in my business, some things that I learned, and some things that we're doing as a company to move forward. So in case you're new to me, my name is Jasmine Womack. I'm a monetization strategist, and I work with women in leadership to help them monetize their expertise through writing and self-publishing a signature book, creating and delivering a signature talk, and hosting events, creating a signature course and coaching program, and of course, hosting live and virtual events. So I'm so glad to be here today. Now, this episode is coming out at the beginning of the year, and I know that oftentimes, we take time to plan for the year, to think about the year. Some people just jump right in. Some people never stop to reflect on the year previously. And I think that when you are in the process of building a profitable thought leadership brand, the planning process is paramount, and part of the planning is reflecting how you started last year, reflecting where you came from, reflecting on where you're going. It's all part of the planning process. And so I had been in thought about some of the learning lessons and challenges that I faced in 2025. And I had been sharing some of them with the email list, but I said, hey, you know what? We're going to take this and go a little bit deeper on the podcast. So we're going to start out with just talking about 3 challenges that I faced in 2025 and how I'm fixing it now. So the first challenge that I faced in 2025 was really maintaining my morning routine and my devotion for an hour. And it was really because I had so much on my plate, right? Like at the top of the year, my husband had gone out of state to work for 5 months and also to get his business off of the ground. I was in support of him doing that. And at the same time, my children were starting their journey as student athletes. Like they've both always been pretty active, but they had never played organized sports and going to school and had practices during the week, games during the week. Like it was just a new dynamic, especially with both of them now having to do this. Like when they were smaller, it was more so, oh, you got practice once a week or maybe on a Saturday. But now we've got practices multiple times a week and games two times a week for one child. And so it just became a lot very quickly. On top of that, I was like in 5 or 6 different masterminds, and still am at the time of this recording, while working on my doctorate. And so it's just like, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to work out and stay on top of my health? How am I going to do all the things and still have my 1-hour devotion in the morning? Because the time just wasn't there. I was running like around the clock. And so I realized after I put together my plan, my plan for the year, literally everything shifted overnight. And like 48 hours later, my husband was gone. And so I was left like managing the home and trying to figure out a new plan, but I didn't really have a chance to figure out a new plan. I just had to move into action, right? And it was during this period I really started really praying for grace. I'm one of those people, I can be really hard on myself. And I felt like I was doing all of these things and I wasn't giving the Lord his time. And I realized that relationship isn't built through like relationship is a heart posture, and of course we've got to put in our time and our prayer, but relationship isn't built through the actions that you take. Like, because there are some people who take the right actions every single day, but their heart isn't in the right place, their character isn't in the right place. And so I had to learn how to give myself grace. And as we move into 2026, I plan to incorporate my morning devotion again, but I also understand that for where I am right now, it's just going to look a little bit different than me spending a whole hour and a half in devotion like I did previously. And so instead of me spending an hour, and I realized that I can have that extended time on the weekends, but during the week, I say I'm going to give myself the rule of 15. I'm going to journal for 5 minutes every day. I'm going to pray for 5 minutes every day. I'm going to visualize for 5 minutes per day. So that's my 15. And then I listen to the audio Bible. I'm listening to, I think it's called the Bible Recap, but it's like a Bible in a year. And it's a plan that I found on the YouVersion Bible app. And usually it's like 10 to 15 minute audio lessons. And I said, you know what? I can listen to this while I get ready for the day. I can listen to this while I am out on my morning run or on the treadmill. I can listen to this while I'm in the shower. And so that way I'm still getting in 30 minutes of devotion. It's just looking differently. Instead of me sitting down and visually reading physically reading the Bible every day, I can do that on the weekends, but during the week, I'm going to listen to the audio Bible while I'm in my car or while I am in transit or whatnot. I might be able to spend my extended journaling time on the weekends, but during the week, when kids have to go to school and we've got all these moving parts, we're going to do the rule of 15, the journaling for 5 minutes, the praying for 5 minutes, the visualizing for 5 minutes, because I know that I can do that while I have breakfast in the morning. So I realize like it doesn't have to be an hour, but it definitely needs to be done, because having this practice helps me to set my tone for the day. And it also will ensure that I still get the word in and can stay focused on what I need to be focused on. And so what this whole experience taught me was that success is not rigid. Success is not rigid, right? Like as seasons change, sometimes demands change, and you may have to just adapt new approaches that align to where you are and where you want to be. And the process is not more than the result. Another challenge that I faced this year was really navigating disappointment and grief. Like, you know, and still having to move forward at the same time. Like, I encountered several moments of disappointment this year, being extremely disappointed by people that I trusted. And I experienced grief when my uncle passed at the top of the fall. And it was not, while it wasn't my first time experiencing grief or navigating disappointment, because I've navigated disappointments in my personal life, but I had several disappointments when it came to the business, and I had not really dealt with grief before. And what I learned is that, yes, I had to discuss my disappointments with my therapist, and I had to move on those disappointments, and adhere to my policies and procedures and move on those business wise. But when it came to grief, I had to be very careful not to allow the grief to overwhelm me. And what I mean by that is that I had to really acknowledge my feelings, and I had to give myself grace during this time. And I had to commit to not sitting in the feeling of the disappointments. I had to commit to not sitting in the grief. Like, I can remember being at my computer working, a day or two after we buried my uncle, and I was just crying nonstop. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to pull myself together. I've got client calls, and grief, they say grief comes and goes in waves. And that's exactly how it was. But I knew that I needed to pull myself together. I wasn't sure how. And I saw a scripture, I subscribe to the Bible app. So every single morning it sends me scriptures. But this particular morning, the scripture came through at a time it didn't normally come through. And I can't remember the exact scripture, like by book and verse, but it said, I have fought the good fight. I remember it saying that I have fought the good fight. And then going on to say that I've gone to be with the Lord. And I took that as my uncle, because my uncle was a minister. And I took that as him in the spirit world sending me this message to calm my nerves, helping me to calm my nerves and telling me, reminding me, hey, this was my decision to go. I did my work on the earth. It was time for me to go home with my Heavenly Father. And that was the thing that brought me peace. And so when people were able to see me moving forward and going on, like, hey, how was this holiday season? I'm like, to be honest with you, the holiday season was fine. It was my uncle's decision to transition. And I felt like he sent me this message to remind me. And I know, like, that's my personal experience. And I know that some people are dealing with grief, and it may not have been that person's decision to transition. And the situation may very well could have been, unexpected. But you have to find something to hold on to give you some level of mental and emotional stability. And the other thing about it was that I knew that my uncle would not have wanted me just sitting there crying. He wanted me to go out and rock it. He wanted me to be the best. So even if that's what you can lean on, like, would this person would your loved one want you to sit there while life stops? Or would they want you to keep going? Would they want you to keep going and just honor them by keeping their memory alive, but go out and rock it? And one thing that I know is that when we hold on to grief, right, we can't go out and be the best. We can't go out and be all that we've been called to be, because we're not giving ourselves the space to. And so I realized that you can honor your loved one and you can acknowledge your disappointments without dwelling on or sitting in the loss. Because at the end of the day, dwelling on it doesn't help anyone. And most importantly, it hurts you more than it hurts anyone else. Another challenge that I faced in 2025 was honestly consistency with emailing my list and recording the podcast and the YouTube videos. Like, I'm not even going to hold you. Working on my doctoral degree this last semester, and a lot of the things that we had to do, along with some of the demands of business, I was mentally, I felt like and then being in these masterminds, I felt like I had reached my mental capacity. And some of it came to do, was really around scheduling too. Like really having to find my footing with the kids, having all of these things that they had going on, and just not really having the support in the back of the house that I needed to. So I ended up having to pick up a lot of slack that one of my former team members, who's no longer with us, just wasn't able to do. That problem's been fixed. And so I think that now, with having the right support team wise, and this isn't no shade to her, I love her. I love her. We are still good. But it was a mutual decision that we probably should part ways. And so I do acknowledge the fact that I had a lot of demands business wise that I normally would not have had. And coupled with everything else that was going on, it was just a lot. And I had to recognize, you know what? I'm only one person. I have a very high capacity, and I've reached my capacity. And so we've brought on recently 2 new team members, one full-time, one part-time, to transition into full-time. That's a whole nother story, the whole hiring and who you need on your team once you get to certain levels in business. And I've put together a process and a plan. Like, for instance, at the time of this recording, it's the top of January. All of my podcast episodes, the podcast topics are already outlined for the year. Like, I know what I'm talking about, and I just have to outline my episodes and record them. Same for my YouTube videos. Even though we do repurpose the podcast to YouTube, the YouTube videos are somewhat different. And so I have all of that mapped out for the whole entire year, all 12 months, right? So that's that out the way. Now I just got to continue scripting my episodes and then set time aside to record it. And I know that if I keep the podcast episodes to 15 to 20 minutes and the YouTube videos to 5 to 10 minutes, I know that within 2.5 to 3 hours, I can record a whole entire month's worth of podcasts and YouTube videos and be done for the month. And that's how I am getting ahead and plan to stay ahead. So this way we won't have any long periods or inconsistencies with podcast episodes. And perhaps you can take this same strategy and apply it to something that you are doing in your business. So these were three of the challenges that I faced. Now, the risks I risked, and I believe that, when you are building and when you are taking things to a new level, you cannot do it and stay in your comfort zone. You're going to have to risk some things because risk is a part of the growing process. And so I risked being seen, like really showing up publicly in new ways, changing my messaging, or, making some adjustments to my messaging a bit, having bigger conversations, talking about bigger numbers, like really bringing to the forefront the things that I had been doing behind the scenes in our programs and in our masterminds, and bringing it out and putting it out on Front Street for everybody to see. That's where Create Your Own Stage Live came from, so that we held in December. So like a lot of people, they weren't necessarily used to hear me talk about selling from the stage, speaking, hosting events. But the truth of the matter is I have been teaching that in my mastermind for the past 5 years, and my clients have seen amazing success with it. I just chose to put it out on Front Street and be more visible and stop hiding it in my back pocket, right? I also like visibility is always going to feel risky, but hiding costs way more. I Create Your Own Stage Live was absolutely phenomenal, and our attendees got so many breakthrough results. Risk number two was that I risked investing big while also building big. Like 2025 was a rebuilding year in my business. And by that, I mean, one of our anchor events that I had held for 4 years, I stopped holding it. Matter of fact, I'll talk about that in number three. But I risked investing big while building big. Like I invested over $100,000 into my personal growth. I joined an advertising mastermind that was $30,000. I joined a brand elevation mastermind that was like $35,000-$40,000. That's like 70 right there. I hired a dissertation coach, and I went in on their biggest package that was like $12,000 at the time that I enrolled. I was in a full doctoral program. I feel like I joined the sales mastermind that was 25,000, and then I hired a digital products coach and invested around $4,000 or $5,000. So we're talking like, and this is throughout the whole year, in addition to the work that I was doing on my doctoral program. And so, yes, this meant stretching financially and mentally, like making a 6-figure investment, in totality into my own learning, growth, and development, into my team's learning, growth, and development. It also meant choosing growth while managing pressure, all the pressure that I was feeling, and then I put this on top of it. And then what it really meant for me was betting on myself in a season where it would have been easier to play it safe. I literally could have just used my doctorate and my doctoral studies as an excuse for not doing anything. But that wasn't my reason why not. That was the reason why. And I think about the things that I needed. I think about the gaps that I knew that I had. I think about the adjustments that I had to make in this season, dealing with the things that were going on economically and politically. And I absolutely made the best decision. I would do it all over again. Like I learned that sometimes that the greatest act of faith is putting resources behind the woman or behind the man that you're becoming, and not looking at all the reasons why you shouldn't, but looking at all the reasons why you should, looking at all the reasons why you need to, thinking about where you want to be this time next year. And the truth of the matter is I made all of it back, made every single dollar back. Every single dollar. But that's also because I'm the type of person that when I invest in something, I don't let it go to waste. I don't look at all the reasons why I can't do it. It's like, I've spent my money on this. I'm going to make this work. Now, did I do all of the programs at the same time? That was enrolled. I'm still enrolled in them. But what I had to do, I had to literally master time blocking and focusing on different programs at different times. And that's how I got through the curriculums and put them to use in my business. The third risk that I took was that I risked scaling down to scale smarter. Like, I made a decision that might not look the flashiest from the outside, but it was probably one of the boldest things that I've done. And that was to scale down. Like, at the end of 2024, I probably had I probably had between 10 and 12 people in my $30,000 mastermind. But and I have different levels of the mastermind. So this was the mastermind elite. And I was stretched. And I said, you know what? I'm not even selling that this year. I'm going to go in a different direction. And so I started focusing more on my other offers, my premium offers, as opposed to my higher ticketed offers. And I really got crystal clear about the direction that I wanted to take my mastermind elite, my different programs. And I got really clear and honest with myself about the capacity in which I wanted to serve. And so one of the things that I realized this year is just because you have it and just because you can teach it doesn't mean that you should. You can turn that extra information into digital products. You can turn that additional information into bonuses, to give to people when they work with you or hire you for specific things. So I had to really detach from this whole notion of, oh, I've done this, or I know all of this and I want to help everybody and give them everything. No, you literally can't give everyone everything that you have. It's not even meant to. It's not even meant for you to do that. And so I also took my live event. I had a very high level live event that cost multiple six figures to produce every single year for the past 4 years. And I stopped doing it. And instead, I hosted 2 smaller events instead. So you're talking about the risks that people take. And it's not just, oh, I'm going to take this risk. It was also having to build out brand new events from the ground up. You're talking about messaging, web pages, back end, the content, the curriculum, all of this. These are full blown projects that we're taking on to build out these brand new events and market it and sell it and fill the room. So it was a lot. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it wasn't a lot. It was a lot, but it was necessary. And I think that, and especially as I look at so many of my colleagues or now former colleagues, so many people quitting their businesses and stopping and, going back to get jobs. And I don't have anything against people who work a job. I tell most people, keep your job and work your business on the side. But I've seen people just totally shut everything down. And I don't understand just shutting everything down. I believe in pivoting and making adjustments, right? But what happens when you're not willing to make adjustments, or you don't sit down and think about how you can still operate in your business, but do it in a different way? I think that some people's rigidity and their refusal to make adjustments and their refusal to see things or look at things from a different perspective, honestly, is what drove them out of business. Because I don't know anybody who enjoyed the work that they were doing who just quit. I'll be totally honest with you. There were people that might have been making a lot of money, like I was with one of my offers, and it's just like, you know what? I don't want to do this in this way anymore because it's taxing. So I'm still going to do this, but let me find a different way to do this. Let me find a different way to serve my clients and do it in a way in which I'm not exhausted and I'm still honoring myself. And so scaling down freed up my time. It gave me more peace of mind, and it allowed me to create a model that really, really felt aligned. And I was able to model that for my clients. I was able to model what the pivot looks like. I was able to model what the adjustment looks like. I was able to model trying new things, right? When you're scaling isn't always about doing more. Sometimes scaling is doing what's right and just building with wisdom and building with what feels right. And I think a lot of us we know what feels right to our spirit, but we ignore it. And when you ignore it, that's when you're going to step into overwhelm and all those other icky, emotions and feelings. Okay. And so risk taking can definitely feel scary, but you don't have to be fearless. You just got to be faithful. I want you to remember that. Some of the lessons that I learned this year is like going back to what I was saying, like listen to yourself. If what you're doing doesn't feel right and it feels like you, and we got to distinguish between feeling overwhelmed and feeling burdened. Sometimes people use the word overwhelmed to describe not knowing something and being stretched. There's a difference between unfamiliarity and the, what should we say, the intimidation that comes from unfamiliarity versus with being burdened. Like being, when you feel burdened, that's like in your spirit, in your soul, in your body. You don't want a business that makes you feel burdened. It's okay to feel sometimes feeling overwhelmed is an indication that you're learning something new or that you need to create different processes and systems so that you can feel more comfortable. And sometimes it's just giving yourself grace. But when what you're doing feels burdensome, that's a feeling of heaviness. Like it's heavy to your soul. And that's when you need to change. And a lot of times people don't change and it puts them out of business. But I realized that God really speaks to me. And the best thing that I can do is honor what I feel the Spirit of the Lord telling me to do. Like that is probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned. Even if it requires you to go against the grain, even if it requires you to do something different, even if it requires you to do something challenging, like enrolling in each of those programs. Each of those programs that I enrolled in was an answer to a prayer that I had about specific things. But it wasn't just me enrolling. I had to do the work so that I could get the ROI, right? Another lesson that I learned is that sometimes what we feel is our capacity is really a limitation. And it's fear disguised as limited capacity. It's fear of, oh, I don't think I'll be successful. It's fear of, oh, I'm thinking about all these things I got going on and I don't see how it can be done. Well, the truth of the matter is, if you knew how it could be done, you would do it. But that's why in a multitude of counselors, there's wisdom. That's why when you hire coaches or when you hire trusted mentors, they can help you to see things that your blind spots aren't allowing you to see. I had to have this conversation with one of my coaches, Marshawn Evans Daniels. She's the author of Believe Bigger and 100 Days to Believe in Bigger devotional journal. And I had this conversation with her. I was like, I'm in statistics. I'm feeling like this. I don't know how I'm going to get this done. I'm not sure that I'm like, I know I need this right now. And I have a feeling you probably won't do it again in this way. I know I need to join, but I'm not seeing how I'm going to make it work. And what I realized is that growth doesn't wait for all the dots to line up so that they can be connected. God is looking for you to give your yes in faith, and then you can figure things out. And for me, that's what it was. It's like I had to give my yes in faith and then figure out the timing. And I had a conversation with Marshawn, and she was the one that helped me to see, you know what, you're not saying that you don't have the time because you really don't have it. This is fear talking. And we had a conversation, and I immediately saw, oh, I had a misconception. And I immediately saw how I could do a specific thing that I needed to do literally in a weekend. And it was literally my own limitations clouding me and making me feel like you don't have capacity, when really it was just fear. And it was a misunderstanding of something that I was going to have to do, that my perception of what I was going to have to do wasn't what it actually was. It wasn't that heavy. It wasn't as heavy as I was making it out to be. All right. A third lesson that I learned is that, and I'll be honest here, and I'll do a separate episode about hiring again. But when you get to certain levels in business, you absolutely need full-time employees. I think that there is a space and a time for contractors. And I also believe that you can hire contractors on a project basis. But when you're hiring contractors and you're paying retainer rates, oftentimes you're actually spending more money. You're paying retainer rates for an extended period of time. Oftentimes you're spending more money than you have to spend. You will actually save more money if you hired a full-time employee, because now the same money that you're putting into this retainer contractor, now that's going into a full-time employee, and their time is not split. They're totally dedicated to your company, as opposed to someone else where you're paying them a flat fee retainer every single month and you're only getting them for a certain amount. After you reach a certain point in business, you need a matter of fact, you need or and time that you need to help grow your business to the next level. Like, hiring should be a business growth and scaling decision. Hiring is not just about getting someone in to complete tasks. This is about ownership of the role so you can move the company forward. But that is a different topic for a different episode. So these were some of the challenges that I Welcome to the Published and Paid podcast, where we share book, business, leadership, and life lessons in 20 minutes or less to help you build a thought leadership brand and business. My name is Jasmine Womack. I'm a former middle school language arts teacher turned seven-figure entrepreneur, and I am glad that you are here. Let's get started.